Hello everyone, FPL Raptor here and welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel. In today's video we have my Game Week 26 team selection and I have indeed activated the wildcard. Don't worry though, even if you're not on your wildcard, this should still be a very useful video because I'm going to go through all of the upcoming doubles, blanks, chip strategy and just different ways that you might want to approach the upcoming game weeks. If you are enjoying the content here on this channel, please do remember to like, comment and subscribe. Without further ado, let's jump into it. So guys, of course, the focus for today's video is going to be on my Game Week 26 wildcard team selection. But I thought a useful way to start the video would be to go through my thoughts on the current landscape in FPL, what I think of the upcoming blanks and doubles, and how I think is the best way to navigate this. Looking at strategy, chips, and also the teams that you might want to invest in. This is just my opinion, but hopefully it will be useful for you. If you're not interested, of course, feel free to just skip to the team part. But I feel like this is good to contextualize why I'm playing the wildcard this week and why you might want to consider playing your chips slightly earlier than we originally planned. The schedule that you can see on your screen is from the wonderful Ben Krellin over on Twitter. Do go make sure to support him for creating such a brilliant planner and just making it so much easier for us FPL content creators. So I've got a little list to my right of the things that I want to make sure that I talk about in this section. I'll try to keep it as short as possible. The first thing is the blanks and doubles. So the immediate sort of cluster of blanks and doubles that we've got coming up is double Game Week 27, blank Game Week 28, and double Game Week 29. We've known about those for a while. The doubles in 27 look really enticing. The blank in 28 looks like it will actually be able to navigate it now without a free hit, which I'll discuss in a second. We then have a really big double Game Week 29, which is the biggest double game week of the season. We've then got a very small blank Game Week 32, which I'll discuss in a second, a relatively small double Game Week 34, and then a relatively small double Game Week 37. So by far and away, the biggest blank and double now for the remainder of the season will be blank Game Week 28 and double Game Week 29. Now, what has changed in recent weeks, or very recently in the last week, is we've now got a lot more information around blank Game Week 32, double Game Week 34, and double Game Week 37. So due to the FA Cup results, the blanks and doubles after 32, from 32 onwards, will be much smaller now because certain teams didn't progress in the FA Cup. So what that essentially means is it's less chaos, but it's also slightly more difficult to utilise chips in the best fashion for those later weeks, because what we really want is massive blanks and massive doubles, because it then starts to get pretty tricky because you can't navigate big blanks and big doubles without playing your chips, or at least you can't do it as effectively. But now the fact that we know that double Game Week 30, 34 and 37 are quite small, and blank Game Week 32 is quite small, I actually think you can navigate that back end of the season without any chips at all. You might want to play a couple, but it makes it a lot easier. As a result, it makes it less tempting for me to save the wildcard, to save the free hit, to save the bench boost for those later weeks when, at the moment, blank Game Week 32, it will be 2 fixtures that we'll be blanking, only 4 teams. Game Week 34 and 37 will have either 4 or 6 doubles. So we're not looking at a lot of teams here that will be blanking and doubling, and I don't think it'll be difficult to navigate as a result. And so when I look at 27 to 29, this is a period where if I don't play a wildcard, my team is going to struggle for these weeks. The reason for that is there are certain teams that are just fantastic now to own throughout. So Brentford is the big one. And I know a lot of people are sitting there saying, well, I don't necessarily want to own a Brentford triple up anyway. And you might not, but hear me out. Brentford have a decent fixture in 26 against Fulham. They've then got Everton and Southampton double in 27. They now have a fixture in blank Game Week 28 against Leicester. They then have Brighton and United, which isn't the easiest double in 29, but it is a double nonetheless. Some very decent single game week fixtures. And then in Game Week 32, they actually have Aston Villa at home. So they play also in blank Game Week 32. They won't be doubling in 34 or 37. But what that means is if you have triple Brentford, you can hold them right through from 26 to sort of 32, 33, and then maybe take them out ahead of the double in 34, although it is a fixture against Nottingham Forest at home. So basically, Brentford assets look like great assets to own. Brighton are a similar story, but in a slightly different way. So Brighton actually have 5 double game weeks across the remainder of the season. They've got one in 27, 29. They'll pretty much have one in 34 and 37. And then they'll have another one chucked in there somewhere as well. So 5 doubles, but they also have 2 blank weeks. That's great to own them for if you can get away with benching them in those blank weeks. So I'm looking also at the moment, I want at least 2 or 3 Brighton assets. Well, I want at least 2, potentially 3 Brighton assets. So immediately if I look at my current team, I don't have any Brighton, I don't have any Brentford. So that's immediately 6 players that I would change in a wildcard. I would add 3 Brentford, 3 Brighton. I'm also looking at Newcastle as well now. So some of us took Newcastle assets out for the blank in Game Week 25, or maybe we just don't Trippier anyway. Newcastle have a really nice run of fixtures. They have a fixture in 28. They double in 29 with a pretty nice double against Manchester United and West Ham. And then obviously they have a decent fixture in blank game week 32 against Tottenham at home, who at the moment don't look like an excellent side. So it looks pretty good to own Newcastle assets. So immediately I would want to own probably 1 or 2 more Newcastle assets. So as you can see, it starts to stack up. On top of that, I just don't like the look of my team particularly. I've got Nketiah, who's a massive rotation risk. I've got triple Liverpool, and Liverpool did disappoint. And we thought that maybe they would improve. Some of their assets did quite well. I don't really want to hold on to triple Liverpool long term. Not only because I don't think they're an excellent side at the moment, but also because they now blank in game week 28. So I don't want Liverpool for that reason, because they cause me an issue in the blank. So as you can see, hopefully that it's becoming quite clear for me that the chips aren't very useful later on in the season because the blanks and doubles are a little bit smaller. The blanks and doubles right in front of us, we have that information. We know there's a double in 27. We know all of the fixtures in 27 and 29. And also now, because of some of the teams that double in 29 and also play in 28, we can actually put together a really decent team for game week 28, regardless of a free hit. So, for example, triple Brentford, immediately, they now serve you fine for game week 28. Triple Arsenal, immediately, so that's 6 players. And you can start to build a really decent team for 28. So I'm looking at a wildcard now in 26 or 27, and I can actually build a really good wildcard that sees me with 6 doublers in 27, 9 or 10 players in game week 28, which is a blank week, and then 11 or 12 double game week players for a bench boost in game week 29. So at the moment, my strategy, and almost definitely will be my strategy, is wildcard 26, bench boost 29. The difficulty then becomes, well, when do you chuck that free hit? If you're going to wildcard now and you're going to bench boost in 29, where does that free hit come in? You could free hit in 28 if you want to, but I don't think that's necessary, as you'll see when you look at my team selection for the wildcard for 26. The other 2 options are either free hitting in 32 or free hitting in one of the other doubles, 34 or 37. At the moment, I much prefer game week 32 because Brighton are likely to blank, and Manchester United are likely to blank, and Man City are likely to blank. When I look at the team that I'm likely to have for 32, I'll almost definitely have triple Brighton, maybe 2. I'll almost definitely have triple Manchester United, and I'll almost definitely have Haaland. So immediately just with those 3 teams, that's 7 players that I'll have blanking for 32. So I think that the way that we'll build our teams for 29 and beyond and around those game weeks, I think a free hit in 32 makes a lot of sense. So my current strategy altogether, hopefully a lot of that made sense, or at least some of it, is wildcard 26, bench boost 29 for the big double, and then free hit in the second blank game week 32. Yes, it is a small blank, and yes, you could almost definitely navigate 32 without the free hit. But I just think my team will probably look decent for double game week 34 and 37. I don't need it in 27, 28, or 29. 32 just makes the most sense. It's probably not going to get me a load more points than my usual team would, but I think it will be enough. And I like some of the other matchups in that week. So I think that's pretty much it. The only other question was around game week 26 versus 27. Like, why are you wildcarding now rather than in game week 27? There are 2 major pros to wildcarding in game week 26. The first is it sorts out my team for this week, which I don't think looks very good on paper for game week 26 in and of itself. And the second thing is it gives you an extra free transfer for game week 28 or 29. So because you're playing it in 26 and someone else will be playing it in 27, you of course get that extra transfer, which you can roll over to use in the blank game week or the big double. So it's not a lot, it's 1 extra transfer. The pros of wildcarding in game week 27 is that you get an extra week of information. So it might be that actually a couple of key players get injured. That extra transfer that I get might not matter if you end up changing 2 or 3 players in comparison to what I would in 26. So if you're happy with your team this week, don't wildcard this week, wildcard in 27. I just feel like there's no point waiting for me because unless there are massive injuries or unless something big changes, which it shouldn't, I don't think there's a massive amount of difference between my wildcard 26 and wildcard 27. In fact, I think it would be pretty much identical. So that's why I'm going early this week. Hopefully that makes sense for my strategy. If there are any questions around the general blanks and doubles coming up and how you're planning on approaching this and just any questions on the FPL landscape at the moment, please do let me know down below. I'll try my best to answer. Let's now take a look at my Game Week 26 wildcard. So do make sure you stick around until the end of the video from here on in because it's important to look at your team for 26, but it's almost more important to see how the team lines up for 27, 28, and 29, because that's the real reason I'm wildcarding this week. It's not to set up my team for 26. It's to set up my team for double 27, blank 28, and double 29. So the team on paper looks fine for this week. It's better than my original team on paper, but that isn't why I'm doing it. So it's key to see how the team contributes to sort of long-term planning and how it allows me to save my free hit, but also play the bench boost in 29. So do stick around to the end of the video for that. It's actually got 4.4 million in the bank at the moment, and there are quite a few positions where I'm not 100% set. So do tune into the deadline stream to see my final team, but most of it is fairly set in stone, and most of the decisions is kind of a 50-50 between 2 very similar players. I'm going to start with the goalkeepers. There are a lot of goalkeeper rotations that I really like, and I know a lot of people don't like rotating keepers. If you don't, I think it's relatively straightforward. If you don't like rotating keepers, I would go for Raya as your main keeper because he covers for you for all of the doubles pretty much and all of the blanks right up to game week 32. Obviously, they don't have a double in 34 or 37, but you can deal with that as and when. So I feel like Raya is the best keeper if you're going for a keeper that you're going to start every single week. And then if you're going to bench boost, you can either go for Ward or Areola. Now, Fabianski's injury, I don't have a time frame at the moment, but it looks like he could be out until game week 29. But even so, a lot of West Ham fans are saying that Areola is first choice, should be first choice now, even if Fabianski's fit. Don't quote me on that. If you want to go for safety, it will probably be Raya and Ward, but just consider who you want for your bench boost in game week 29. So that's the first thing if you don't want to rotate keepers. If you do want to rotate keepers, my favourite rotating keeper pairings are Kepa plus one of Sanchez and Raya. I think that Kepa and Sanchez is a much better rotation for two reasons. Kepa and Sanchez rotate better because their fixtures just rotate better. So in each week, it just looks like a perfect fixture on paper. However, I think it's game week 32. Obviously, Chelsea and Brighton are both likely to blank. So if you're not free hitting in 32, you will face an issue in 32 where Kepa and Sanchez are both likely to blank and you won't have a goalkeeper. So do consider that. The other reason that I do like Kepa and Sanchez, though, is Sanchez and Henry, or Sanchez and me, for example, Sanchez and a Brentford defender give you one extra fixture in game week 28 versus Raya and a Brighton defender. Because, of course, you can play Kepa in game week 28. So the Sanchez rotation with a Brentford defender instead of a Brentford defender and a Brighton defender and a Brentford keeper, hopefully that makes sense. It gives you one extra fixture in game week 28. So I really like Kepa and Sanchez for those reasons. Now, the reasons that I don't like Sanchez and the reason that Sanchez isn't in my team is he just makes no saves. He makes like, and I mean like no saves. I think in the last like 5 or 6 game weeks, Sanchez has made something like 15 and then Kepa and Raya have made between like 30 and 40 saves. So yes, Sanchez will probably be slightly better for clean sheets than Raya. Yes, I prefer the rotation and the fixtures, but I just don't feel like Sanchez is a 10, 11 point keeper at the moment. That being said, De Zerbi is quite an attacking coach. They play quite attacking football. So maybe we'll start to see more saves from Sanchez. I don't know. But I just think that Raya is a significantly better keeper. So whilst you do get an extra fixture in 28 with Sanchez and a Brentford defender instead, I prefer Raya. Hopefully that's clear. So if you just want to go for one keeper, I would go for Raya. And then Kepa and Raya or Sanchez, if you want to rotate, I think is really nice as well. This week, I'm probably looking at starting Kepa just to cover the Chelsea defence because I already have a Brentford defender. Moving on to the defence, this is where I'm really struggling because I think it makes a lot of sense for most teams that are wildcarding in 26 to have a Brighton, Arsenal and Brentford defender, plus, as you can see on the bench, 2 Newcastle defenders. The issue is that Brighton, Arsenal and Brentford all have tons of options, and even to some extent Newcastle do as well. For Brighton, you've got Estepinian or Dunk, I would say, are the best 2 options. For Arsenal, you've got Zinchenko, any of the back 4, but probably Zinchenko or Gabriel, my favourite 2 options. And then for Brentford, you've got Henry, Pinnock and me. Starting with Brighton, because I think that's the easiest one for me. If Estepinian is fit, and I don't know at this stage because I've not seen the press conference from De Zerbi, he is a no-brainer for me. He looks very, very nailed. He's the only left-back that they actually have. Otherwise, they have to play sort of Lamptey or Gross at left-back. And he's very, very attacking with excellent data, and he's got a goal and assist in him. So Estepinian, for me, is the most obvious pick. I have considered Dunk just for safety, and obviously the fact that Estepinian could be injured. But for me, if Estepinian has a chance of playing in 26, he's a no-brainer. Zinchenko versus Gabriel is a tricky one because I think Zinchenko is the better defender if they play an equal amount of minutes, or if Zinchenko starts all of the games and gets to 60 minutes. He's better for bonus points. He's better for attacking threat as well. And he passes the ISIS. He's getting into some really, really good positions too. However, he isn't probably as nailed as Gabriel. They've got Tomiyasu. When Tierney's fit, he can play there too. And Zinchenko does have a pretty poor injury record in recent sort of months and years as well. And I do think there's a possibility that Zinchenko picks up an injury probably before Gabriel. Do I want to create a headache for myself? I think if I was planning on keeping this Arsenal defender long term, I would go for Gabriel. But with my current plan, I'm actually looking at Zinchenko to Shaw in game week 29. So realistically, I only need this Arsenal defender for 26, 27 and 28. That for me is what is lent me back in favour of Zinchenko away from Gabriel. Because at the moment he's fit, at the moment he's playing excellently, and he doesn't look particularly fatigued or tired. I think there's a very good chance he starts the next 3. So for that reason, That's why I'm currently on Zinchenko. But I think if you're looking for an Arsenal defender that you think you will keep for the remainder of the season, I would just go for Gabriel just for safety of minutes. Also, the next 3 fixtures for Arsenal look very good for a potential Gabriel goal. A lot of people talking about it on Twitter. The next 3 teams are the 3 worst teams in the Premier League for chances conceded from corners or from set pieces this season. So there is a goal in there for Gabriel across the next 3 fixtures. So if you want to go for him, I don't mind it. I could still potentially lean back towards Gabriel, but at the moment, just his data is really, really good. I'm preferring Zinchenko. Then we move on to Henry. Now, this is a tricky one because Henry, Pinnock, me, I think all 3 are good options. We'll start with Ben Mee. I think if they were all the same price, I would be going for Ben Mee. Number one, I just like him as a player. I think he's exciting to watch. He always looks like he's going to get on the end of corners. But he is 5 million now. Pinnock's 4.4. Henry is 4.5. I just don't see enough value in me to pay the extra 0.6 or 0.5 over the other 2. So for that reason, at the moment, I've ruled out Ben Mee. Henry versus Pinnock's a tricky one because Pinnock's actually got some really decent goal threat recently. But over the last 6, Henry is something like 6th or 7th for defenders for expected goal involvement per 90 over the last 6 weeks. So Henry in recent weeks has been looking pretty attacking. Now, Brentford can play 4 at the back or 5 at the back. Henry is, of course, much better when Brentford play 5 at the back. But regardless, I really like him as an option, and he looks very, very, very nailed as well. I was speaking to 2 Brentford fans. Both of them are picking Henry on their GW26 wildcard, which makes me feel a little bit better knowing that fans think that Henry is a good option too. I think the only issue that I have with Pinnock is that apparently once Janssen's back, apparently there could be a little bit of rotation there and he would be the one to drop out as opposed to me. And I just don't want that risk particularly. So I think Henry is slightly more nailed long term, although I think Pinnock, me and Henry are all pretty nailed. So for 4.5, I feel like he's decent value. Like I said in the previous section, covers you for 27, 28, 29, and 32. Triple Brentford makes a lot of sense, and I think Henry's the best defender for me at the moment. And then the other 2 defenders, like I said, Trippier and Botman. I think double Newcastle looks great because Newcastle are a fantastic defence. They've got a really nice fixture in Game Week 28. They double in 29. They'll have another double at some point in the near future too. And they cover you for 32 if you don't want a free hit. So because I don't really necessarily love any of the attacking options from Newcastle, I have absolutely no option with going for 2 defenders. And I still have a 3rd option open if I want to bring in the likes of Almiron or Wilson or Isak at some point in the future. So the defence is relatively nailed, relatively locked on at the moment. Kepa and Raya, I think, is going to be the rotation I go for, although it could still be Kepa and Sanchez, I suppose. But I really like Estepinian, and that's one of the other reasons I don't necessarily want Sanchez, is Estepinian just looks like a great option. Zinchenko versus Gabriel could change, and then Henry versus Pinnock, I suppose, could change at the moment. As well, but at the moment I'm going for the 3 left backs: Estepinian, Zinchenko, Henry. That wasn't on purpose, but I quite like the idea of having 3 left backs. So that's the defense. Let's move on to the midfield. I can already tell this video is going to be very long, so I'm going to skip through some of the obvious picks as quickly as I can. We'll start with Rashford. I think Rashford, whilst he does blank in Game Week 28 and probably will blank in 32, he's got a really nice double in 29, and in and around those blanks you are going to want to have Rashford in your team. So for me, bit of a no-brainer. I'm not going to sell him. We've got money tied up, and he's just a fantastic asset to own. And it's a similar story with Saka because Arsenal don't have any doubles now for the remainder of the season, but they do cover you for all of the blanks. So no blanks, no doubles. And he is one of the best assets to own in FPL at the moment. On penalties, great data, passing the eye test. There's no reason to sell Saka. And at the moment, I've got the armband on Saka. Now, I need to give this more thought because my mind has been so preoccupied with the wildcard. I've not really thought about captaincy too much for Game Week 26. I just think that Saka against Bournemouth at home is better than Haaland against Newcastle. I think, yes, it is Newcastle at home, which does maybe make me lean slightly back towards Haaland, but I still think like it's a better fixture for Saka. Saka's playing really well. He's also on penalties, extra point for a goal, extra point for a clean sheet. At the moment, I'm backing Saka, but I would love to know down below in the comments who you currently planning on captaining in Game Week 26. Saka, Haaland, or potentially someone else. So Saka and Rashford, pretty much nailed. I've not removed them from any of my drafts. Ødegaard's a tricky one because I don't necessarily want Ødegaard particularly in my team. And I don't necessarily particularly want an Arsenal asset in there, again, because they don't double in 29. I'll be bench boosting in 29. So I want to try and get as many fixtures as I can. And there are some really nice options in Game Week 29. The only player that doubles in 29 and plays in blank Game Week 28 that I wouldn't mind owning is Maddison. My only issue with Maddison is, of course, we don't know how fit he is. Now, it looks like, I'm recording this on Thursday evening, just for context. It looks like Maddison could be fit for Game Week 26, but we don't know that. And again, we don't know how fit he's going to be and how many minutes he's going to play and if that injury is going to creep back in. Do I need to go for Maddison now, or should I just go for Ødegaard? And if I want Maddison, I can bring him in for 28 or 29. It feels like maybe, yes, it would save me a transfer if he's fit, but it is also potentially causing issues, especially when I've got other assets that might be injured and might be potential rotation risks. I don't know if it's one too many risks on this Game Week 26 wildcard. The other options that I like are Fernandes and Bowen for Game Week 29 in that spot. The issue is Fernandes and Bowen both blank in Game Week 28. So I can't really go for Fernandes and Bowen at the moment. So I've got two options, essentially, to just narrow this down. I go with Ødegaard now. Keep Ødegaard through Game Week 28 because, again, Arsenal have a good fixture in Game Week 28. And then in 29, I sell Ødegaard for Bowen, Maddison or Bruno. Or the other option is I just go for Maddison from the off in my wildcard team. But again, it feels like a little bit of a risk. So at the moment, Ødegaard's got that spot. Just quickly to discuss Martinelli. He looks really good at the moment. I shouldn't have sold Martinelli for Ødegaard, but that's a little bit of hindsight. He looked like his minutes were going to drop massively. If his minutes are nailed, and I've said this all season, this isn't something new, just based on what happened in 25, Martinelli is better than Ødegaard if he plays a similar amount of minutes. We just don't necessarily think he will, especially with Jesus back now. They've got Jesus, Smith Rowe, Trossard, and Nketiah, Martinelli. Saka's pretty much nailed, and so is Ødegaard. So there's a lot of players for a couple of spots there. So I still think Ødegaard's the safer bet, but maybe for the next few, Martinelli could do a pretty good job. Let me know what you think down below between Martinelli and Ødegaard. The final two spots in every single draft I've made have been two Brighton midfielders. The issue is that we've got three to choose from, maybe four if you include Gross, but I've not really looked at Gross. So it's Matoma, March, and McAllister. This is the trickiest decision on my wildcard for me. Yes, the defence hasn't been particularly easy in the keepers, but realistically, it's picking two of those three Brighton midfielders. There are a couple of ways to look at this. Well, I guess the first thing is you could drop Estepinian and go for three of them. So instead of Ødegaard, you could have March, Matoma, and McAllister. It maybe feels like a little bit of overkill there just because you can't choose. I feel like you should just suck it up and choose the two that you think will do well. If we're looking at data across the entire season and post-World Cup, Solly March is the one to go for, which is why you can see him in my team. I'm big on data. And by data, I mean expected data, underlying data. March is just absolutely brilliant. It's about a 0.7 expected goal involvement across the season. Post-World Cup, it's around a 0.98 expected goal involvement per 90. So March's data is great. A lot of that is made up for expected assists. So it's a 0.59 expected assists. So the expected goals aren't brilliant. He's not a massive goal threat. But when you put that in combination, really good assist threat and decent goal threat, I can't not put March in my team. I need to put my money where my mouth is. When I talk about data, March is that guy. His data's really, really good. And I didn't realize how good it was until I looked at it a couple of days ago. So March feels like, for me, the best of the three. Then the other two, it really depends what you value in an asset. So in recent weeks, McAllister has been playing the number 10 role. Lallana is out for the season. They don't have anyone else really to play that number 10 role effectively. Matoma can play it, but then they have to find someone to replace Matoma. So at the moment, it looks like McAllister is the only one that can really play that role. However, in the Cup, they actually dropped McAllister into the pivot, and then they put Matoma, I believe, in the number 10 role. So it shows that they can switch it around, and McAllister can drop back into that more defensive role. When McAllister plays the number 10 role, his data is exceptionally good. It's better than March's for me, just because it's a greater amount of expected goals. His total expected goal involvement isn't better, but he's a much bigger goal threat. The other reason that I love McAllister is he's on penalties as far as we know. So on penalties, the best goal threat of the three, and playing in a very advanced position at the moment, McAllister on paper looks like the best of the three. The reason that I wouldn't put him as my favourite above March is just because when he drops into a defensive role, you are reliant on penalties. His data across the season is pretty poor. His data before switching to a number 10 is very poor. We're looking at about a 0.3, 0.4 expected goal involvement. So McAllister is not a good option if he drops deep. If he stays in the number 10 role, I love him as an option. So it's whether you want to take a risk on that. Then moving on to Matoma. Matoma's actually got the worst data of the three post-World Cup. And across the season, it's not been that great either. We're looking at about a 0.5 expected goal involvement. It's not terrible, but it's not fantastic. And my issue with Matoma at the moment is he's playing quite wide. So what we're seeing with Brighton is similar to what we've actually seen with Arsenal, where Matoma is playing really wide and maintaining the width in the way that kind of Martinelli and Saka do. And Estepinian is playing almost more like an inside role. So he's making more of those inverted runs. Matoma stays out wide, and it's actually Estepinian that's popping up in and around the box. The issue that I've got, though, with looking at that and saying, well, then I'm not going to pick Matoma, is things change very quickly in FPL. We saw Martinelli was playing really wide. His data wasn't as good. Wasn't as many big chances for him. His minutes were a bit of a risk. And then 3 weeks later, he showed his true quality. And Matoma, for me, is the best of the three players. If we're talking about raw talent, if we're talking about someone's going to cut in from the wing and shoot, who do I want to be on it? I would back Matoma to score ahead of March and McAllister. I think he's the better footballer. And it worries me that that level of talent could just be turned on at any point. And yes, at the moment, he's playing quite wide. And yes, at the moment, his data isn't great. But I think he's the most talented of the three. And I know talent doesn't mean he's a great FPL option. But that would worry me, leaving out Matoma just because of the data, when he massively passes the eye test anytime I watch him. And he's the best of the three when we're looking at, like I said, raw talent. So I don't know what to do, essentially. I'm really, really struggling here. I think March has to be locked in for me just because of his data. Unless March has picked up an injury, in which case this entire section was just... Unless March's injury keeps him out, I should say, for 26, in which case this entire section is irrelevant, and I apologise. If there's a chance March is fit, I think I've got to pick him. And then I would probably start either McAllister or Matoma if March is a doubt, and I would just bench Solly March. Because as you can see, with my current team, I have to bench one of the Brighton midfielders anyway. So at the moment, it's March, McAllister and Matoma are equal for different reasons. Penalties and data as a 10 for McAllister, but eye test and just general ability is in favour of Matoma. Let me know down below if you are in a wildcard. I assume you're picking probably two Brighton midfielders. Who are the two that you're going for? Matoma, McAllister, and Solly March. This section's a little bit more straightforward now. So we've got Haaland, Toney, and Kane. Realistically, I've only considered 4 forwards. So the fourth forward here would be Watkins. I do like Iheanacho, but it's a similar story to Maddison that you don't necessarily need to have Iheanacho now. You can just wait until game week 28 or 29 to bring Iheanacho in. We are going to have free transfers to use. So for me, this is the full front three. There is, like I said, justification to pick Watkins. I just think that the other three are too good. We'll start with Toney. Toney is on 8 yellow cards, and when he hits 10 yellow cards, he will get a 2-match suspension. And of course, he has the betting allegations and suspension looming over him. He's pleaded guilty to apparently most of those, 260 odd cases. But it doesn't look like the hearing will be until April. So we'll probably have Toney until post game week 29, which is when I'd probably be looking to sell him anyway. So Toney for me covers you for game week 27 double, covers you for blank game week 28 and double game week 29. And potentially if we need him for then blank game week 32, but I may sell him by then anyway. So Toney feels pretty obvious, even with the yellow card and the betting allegations hanging over him. Then we've got Haaland and Kane. I'm going to start with Haaland. There's a lot of people looking at dropping Haaland. I understand why. I'm currently not looking at captaining him. I'm probably leaning towards Saka at the moment. If you're not captaining him in 26, you won't captain him in 27 because it's a double for Brighton and Brentford. He blanks in game week 28. In game week 29, he's only got a single fixture against Liverpool. So realistically, if you're not captaining Haaland in 26, you're not captaining Haaland probably until game week 30. So you've got 4 game weeks there of not captaining him and no doubles and a blank. And no double again, in 29. So you could potentially get like an extra 2 or 3 fixtures by bringing in another asset in there and some better captaincy options too. My issue is in the weeks where he does play, he's still a fantastic asset. So no, I wouldn't probably captain him in 26 or 27. I may well captain him in 26, but 27 definitely not. Doesn't mean I don't want to own him for those weeks. And even in game week 29 against Liverpool, I could see him scoring there. Do I back someone like an Ollie Watkins with a double to outscore Haaland? Probably just, but do I want to risk selling Haaland? Maybe not. So I understand why people are looking to sell Haaland, especially in game week 28, because he blanks and then it's Liverpool. So in those weeks, if you bring in Watkins, you get 3 fixtures versus Haaland's 1 fixture and 3 probably better fixtures as well. So I understand why you might want to do it in 28. For me, I don't think I want to do it in game week 26 because you've still got 2 fixtures for Haaland before he blanks. So that's my opinion on it. I'll be having Haaland in my wildcard. I will consider selling him in 28, but I don't need to think about that now. Then the final one is Kane. This is quite a recent addition. So it was actually Watkins in Kane's position. But of course, because Spurs and Southampton lost in the FA Cup, Spurs now have a fixture against Southampton in game week 28. So whilst Kane doesn't double in 29, he does cover you with some really good fixtures from 26 to game week 30. You may want to sell him after that, but I just think the fixtures look too good. And the fact that he's got a really nice fixture up, probably going to be my captain in game week 28. I just don't think I can justify going without Harry Kane. So that's the team. Hopefully it makes sense. It was a pretty long sort of justification for all of them, but I've done tons of research this week, and I just want to make it clear why I've picked certain players that I've picked. So it is a Brighton triple up, a Brentford triple up, an Arsenal triple up, double Newcastle, and then a few players scattered in elsewhere. Don't click off now, though, because the key thing is, what does this team look like for 27, 28, 29? How am I going to build towards a decent team for 28 and a bench boost in 29 without taking too many hits? So let's take a look at that. So in this final section, it's going to be a little bit more laid back, and I'm just going to go through what my team looks like from 26 all the way through to maybe 32 to just give you an idea about why I think this wildcard is well set up and how I'm using it to navigate the upcoming blanks and doubles all the way into my bench boost in 29 and, like I said, a potential free hit in 32. So we've spoken about the team in kind of enough detail, I think, for game week 26. The only decisions to really make for me are around those Brighton midfielders. We'll wait to see what De Zerbi says in the press conference around potential injuries, and then maybe switching out a couple of the defenders. But largely, I am happy with the team. 4.4 million in the bank, which I don't even know if I spoke about in the previous section, but 4.4 in the bank, and that will be useful for upcoming game weeks. So if we move on to game week 27, 6 double game week players, 3 Brentford, 3 Brighton. Raya comes in. So it's Raya, Henry, Tony, March, McAllister, Estepinian. It could, like I said, be a different Brighton midfielder. The issue that we've got for 27 isn't actually the team. The team's fantastic. It's the bench. And I've seen a lot of people looking at potentially a bench boost in 27 as opposed to a bench boost in 29. I don't hate that at all. I think that's a really, really nice option there. The reason that I think it is a good option is because obviously you've only got a week between game week 26 and 27, whereas between 26 and 29, you've actually got a 1 month break. And between 28 and 29, there's actually an international break. So a lot can change between when we wildcard now and bench boost in 29. So at least you've got the certainty of knowing that most of your players are fit probably for game week 27. The reason I'm not probably considering it is I think Fulham away isn't an easy fixture for Arsenal. I think there is a good chance they'll concede there. So immediately, let's say Zinchenko gets a 1 or 2 pointer. I think Chelsea will concede against Leicester. If it was Leicester at home, I'd be a little bit more confident, but Leicester are actually decent at home, and I don't think the Chelsea defence will be fantastic without Thiago Silva. So good chance that Chelsea concede there. Yes, Botman is probably likely to get a clean sheet, and yes, Ødegaard could get a return, but I think you're probably looking at between, I don't know, 10 and 15 points from that bench, which isn't a disaster for a bench boost, but I'm really targeting 25 odd points, maybe pushing 30 with my bench boost 29, which I think is possible. So at the moment, I'm not playing a 27 bench boost, and I'm not planning to use any transfers. There's very little chance that I'll use a transfer in game week 27 unless one of my Brighton or Brentford players gets injured and I still want to replace them with another doubler. Because the bench is so good, I feel like I can deal with most situations there, which means that going into game week 28, I will have 2 free transfers and 4.4 million in the bank. Now, I have 2 options, but because of the things that I want to do with my transfers in 29, one of them makes a little bit more sense. The first option, which unfortunately limits me a little bit, is to do either McAllister or March to Maddison. It gives me a really nice player in game week 28 in Maddison against Brentford, although I do have obviously Henry in defence. There's a bit of a clash there. But it also gives me a doubler in 29. Now, I know March and McAllister also double in 29, but I think I like the option of having Maddison instead of McAllister and March. And like I said, an extra fixture in game week 28 too. However, that uses up quite a bit of my budget, and it does limit me with what I can do in game week 29. So as a result, I probably slightly prefer the second option, but that is to sell Haaland. So if I sell Haaland for Watkins or Iheanacho, that just leaves me enough budget to do what I want in game week 29. But I just need to be careful, of course, that I don't use all of my budget, that then I can't get Haaland back because I've got no wildcard now. I will want Haaland back at some point, so I need to be a little bit careful there. But let's say I do sell Haaland. I don't know if I will at this point, but let's say that I do sell Haaland, and let's say it's for, I would like it to be Iheanacho, but it could be Watkins. But let's just say I sell for one of them. Going into game week 28, I would have 10 players and a really decent team, and I'd probably captain Kane there. If I don't make either of those moves and I just burn a transfer, let's say, I would still have 9 players for game week 28. So even without doing anything, my team is still really well set up for game week 28. It's just whether I want to get a 10th player and then also another doubler in game week 29. So that's what I need to consider. Going into game week 29, the 2 moves that I want to make are Zinchenko to Shaw and Ødegaard to Fernandes. As I said in the video earlier, I don't want to keep Zinchenko and Ødegaard for double game week 29 because I want to bench boost. And yes, Leeds at home is a decent fixture, but I still feel like I would rather a doubler in that week. So Fernandes and Shaw coming in looks really good, especially as they look good for future weeks as well, Manchester United assets. So I would have now a Manchester United triple up. If we just bring Iheanacho into the team, it would probably be, I reckon Henry would be on the bench. So this would be the bench boost. It's up to you whether you want it to be Raya and Kepa. It's up to you who you think would actually be on the bench. But it would be Raya and Henry, both having a double game week. Like I said, it could quite easily, you could say, actually, it's not Raya, it's Kepa. It doesn't really matter at this stage. A double game week goalkeeper, a double game week defender, and then Saka and Kane as the 2 single game week players who would both be on the bench because they have single game weeks. So 13 doublers, a really strong team and a really strong bench boost with 7 million in the bank to do with as I please, probably to bring Haaland back in immediately in game week 30. But that's the team for 29. That would be for free. So I wouldn't have taken a hit at any point there. Of course, if I want to take out Saka or Kane, I absolutely can. And then the other option I've got is actually taking out one of the Brentford assets for a hit. But I'm just not sure if that makes sense. It's just because the Brentford double isn't great. So for example, you could take out Henry for someone like Castagna, because I would say Leicester have a slightly better double. You could take out, I don't know, Saka for Bowen, because I actually think West Ham have a really nice double. But I'd also think you don't want to go too hard on the doubles, because I will have used my wildcard at this stage. So I can't necessarily wildcard out of this team if I'm not happy with it. So I think the likes of Saka and Kane I want to keep longer term, and the rest of the doublers I think are perfectly fine for double game week 29. So moving through to 30, like I said, it's going to be probably looking at potentially bringing back Haaland. I've got 2 ways to do that. I can just do immediately back for Iheanacho or Watkins, but again, they've both got decent fixtures there. Or I could do it in for Harry Kane. Or I suppose I could just continue to ignore Haaland, but I probably wouldn't want to do that. Let's just say, I don't know, let's say that it is back in for Kane that I want to do it. Maybe it could be in for Iheanacho. It doesn't really matter at this stage. I just want to show you that the team's not looking terrible for game week 30. Obviously, I have free transfers to use at this stage. I might take out one of McAllister or March if I want to. It might be that I'll probably end up starting March, but something like that. And then for 31, the team's actually looking really strong again. I can bench my triple Brighton against Chelsea. The rest of the team's looking very good. Again, I could even start Kepa instead of Raya if I want to mix it up. Game week 31, again, it probably would be Kepa instead of... It would be Raya instead of Kepa, but this is probably the week that I will free hit. The reason I say that, you won't be able to see it on the fixtures here, but Brighton and Manchester United are both likely to blank, and City are likely to blank as well. So that's Haaland, Rashford, Fernandes, Shaw, Estepinian, March, and McAllister. That's 7 players that are likely to blank. I've also got Trippier and Botman against Tottenham, and the rest of the team is okay. I've got triple Brentford against Aston Villa, which isn't terrible, but... And then Iheanacho against Wolves, Saka against Southampton. It just doesn't look great for my team in 32. So that's why I'm probably planning a free hit in 32 to just deal with the fact that I've got triple Brighton and triple Manchester United. Because those teams, and double Newcastle, because Manchester United, Newcastle and Brighton will then double later on in either 34 or 37. So there you go. I'm going to stop there because this is months in the future and this probably won't go to plan, or it won't go at least according to plan exactly. But I guess the key thing just to show you was the team for 27 looks good with 6 doublers. 28, we're looking at either 9 or 10 players. And then going into game week 29, we're looking at 12 or 13 double game week players and a really strong bench boost. So that was a very long video. There's my wild card. Feel free to roast me down below. Let me know what you think of it. And also let me know if you are wildcarding in Game Week 26. So guys, there you have it. That is my Game Week 26 wildcard draft, team selection, and just loads of information around the upcoming blanks and doubles. If it was useful in any way, please do remember to drop a like on the video. Let's aim for 2,500 likes on this video. It will massively help me. Make sure to drop a comment down below. Make sure to subscribe as well. We are on the road to 65,000 subscribers. Until next time, thank you very much for watching. Cheers. Bye-bye.